hi everyone, I'm Isabel Sparrow, Chief Storyteller at Carbon Copy, and I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Curtis from Brighton Hove Energy Services Cooperative, or BHESCo, and Josh Brewer from Ethex. So we've got some presentations to start with, and then we'll get into sort of having a proper chat and hopefully some questions from the audience as well. So Josh, would you like to start with your presentation?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Izzy. And yep, hi everyone. It's good to be here. I'm going to do just a couple of slides just to give a bit of background on Ethex and who we are. So if I just share that. Okay, so Ethex in a sentence, basically mobilizing lots of money in people-powered finance for extraordinary organizations delivering positive change. That's to try and cramming a lot in one sentence, but it's basically saying we've raised lots of money from investors who want to invest their money so they get a positive impact from their investment as well as a fair financial return. And then just a little bit about how that works. So we basically have a crowdfunding platform. We've got about 20,000 people registered on that platform as investors. So we don't invest ourselves, we enable other people to invest. And alongside that crowd, we've also got a number of partner organisations that provide match funding and matched investment. So that includes People's Postcode Lottery, MCS Charitable Foundation, who do the certification for small renewable schemes, UK Aid, and basically they provide sort of either anchor investments of between £10,000 and £50,000 or matched investment alongside the crowd. And so what we do is we work with organisations to bring their offers onto the platform. So people are investing into individual businesses, organisations delivering impact, and that can be into a bond or equity, traditional equity or withdrawable equity, community shares, or loans as well. And we do all the transaction. We handle all the investment transactions on the platform, put together all the money. And then when we get to the end of an offer, either that's the final date for that offer or we hit the target, then we pass the money across to the businesses as well as the investors, and they can get on with delivering impact. And just a little bit about our impact. So on Ethex, we've raised about 80 million in total. Of that, 60 million has gone into community energy. It's a really, really major area of support for us and major interest for our investors. We are seeing growth in other sectors as well: sustainable housing, eco-agriculture, particularly sustainable transport. You know, the transition to electric vehicle infrastructure, car clubs. So we're seeing a lot of interest there, but really where we still see the majority of interest among our investors is into community-owned renewables, actually. And then we have a sister platform called Energize Africa, which has raised £20 million of its own, and that is purely raising money for small and medium-sized businesses delivering off-grid solar in sub-Saharan Africa. And so that's really a kind of whistle-stop tour through Ethex and who we are. So I'll stop sharing there and hand across to Dan.
Thanks, Josh. I'll just press the wrong button, so I'll just share my screen. Okay. My computer's a bit slow. Okay, so thanks for the invitation today, Izzy, and everyone at Carbon Copy. My name is Dan Curtis, and I'm speaking to you on behalf of Brighton and Hove Energy Services Co-op, which is what BHESCo stands for. We're a not-for-profit community energy cooperative based in Brighton and Hove, obviously. BHESCo was set up to overcome what we consider to be the two obstacles to people taking action on climate change. So one of those is technical complexity. So we have an excellent team of project managers who can design optimum low carbon energy solutions for any property. So we've in the past this slide has some examples of projects we've delivered in the last 5 years. So there was an LED lighting project at a bowls club, air source heat pumps, a solar power for churches and schools, and even just last year we produced our first ground source heating project, which was also at a rural school. slide. Oh, one too far, sorry. So this is just a quick summary of what BHESCo's achieved in the last 5 years. Oh, I thought so. The other obstacle that we help people to overcome is the financial barrier, which can prevent people from taking action. So we know that not everybody's going to have the upfront funds available to finance the energy measures that they might want to take to improve their property. So BHESCo will raise that money on our customers' behalf, sometimes on our own, but we've tended to work alongside Ethex in the past. So we'll raise that upfront cost on behalf of a customer to finance the cost of installing their renewable energy or energy efficiency measures. The customer then pays that cost back to BHESCo over a period of time using savings that they would achieve from their energy bills as a result of buying less energy from their supplier, because they're either generating their own or using less from energy efficiency measures. And then we build into that financial model a 3 to 5% interest, which we then pass on to our investors. So in the last 6 years, BHESCo have delivered 57 projects using that model. We now have over 400 members, and we've raised collectively between all our different share offers about £1.5 million. So thank you very much to Ethex for helping with that in the past. I'll stop sharing my screen, yeah, we can talk about how to run a successful community share offer.
Yeah, so thank you very much, both of you. It's great to get a bit of background on sort of the positions you're coming from, and thank you very much for being here. And I think we should probably just start by the big question, which is, what are the key things that you need when you're thinking about setting up a community share offer? What are the key elements?
I'll hand over to Josh.
Yeah, so I'll go first. Well, first off, you need a business model of some sort. So you've got to have it, because the way Ethex works is that we're an investment platform, so it's not a rewards-based platform. So there need to be revenues generated in order that you can continue to fund the project on an ongoing basis, or fund the organisation. That you might want to have some monies that go into a community fund, and you will also need to be able to pay investors a return, and ultimately have a model that shows how investors will be able to get their money back out at the end of a period of time. You need to have that business model in place. You need to have, in terms of the sort of technical things you need for actually having a share offer live, you need to decide what your investment or proposition is going to be. Is that going to be equity, or is that going to be debt? Usually when looking at community energy, that's either withdrawable shares versus bonds, usually. You need to have an offer document, which gives all the information that an investor needs in order to make an informed decision. And so that's things like your impact, who your people are, who the team is, information about the project or projects that you're doing, and also something on your finances and your governance. And you also need an engagement strategy. So crucial to all of this is, going about, and initially for any offer, your initial support is going to come from those people who are close to that project to start off with, whether geographically or because they're stakeholders in that project. They provide that momentum and impetus, and that brings follow-on investment from the crowd. And maybe, Dan, if I pass to you about how BHESCo goes about engaging your community.
Oh, well, I think I absolutely agree with you there. That I think for anybody's first share offer, when you don't have a proven track record of projects delivered or money raised, I think it's very important to spend a considerable amount of time building your network and your audience to ensure that your share offer is going to be successful. I think I know that in the case of BHESCo, it took about 2 years of network building to ensure that when we were ready to have our first share offer, there was a number of existing relationships, almost to guarantee some money in the door from when it first goes live. Because you don't want to launch your share offer to this big fanfare and then it just sits at 0% with maybe everyone else waiting for somebody to invest first. So you certainly want to, ideally, maybe even just start with your friends and your family, or possibly even the project customers, or you want some guaranteed investments, I think, from your really close supporters, just to get the ball rolling. But also, I think in the lead up to your first share offer, to spend at least a year, I feel, attending local events, other, if you're a community, we're a community energy group, it's attending a lot of events where you're going to meet people that are also working in that space, in the sustainability space. So to support their projects, and then to get people to let people know about what you're planning on doing, and then ideally, then once you've built that network, they can help to share the news of your share launch when you finally do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, sorry, carry on. I was going to say
one small thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Izzy.
No, yeah, you go for it. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna totally agree with something Dan was saying there about crowd behavior, basically. So when you're talking about something like a platform like Ethex, it's crowdfunding, and when you first launch an offer, if it sits there on zero, it will stay on zero, because there's this first mover thing where people won't be the first in, which is why it's really important to have that motivated base who are all warmed up, ready to go, and you can just unleash them. They put some money in, and it's really interesting. People see money going into it and they'll go, okay, that's validated it for me. And it's really on the Ethex platform that there's validation from the local community by seeing that initial early monies going in, and then the crowd follows on. So it's just to really emphasize that point, it's crucial.
Yeah, and I think on a slightly technical point as well, of which I don't have great knowledge or experience, but I believe you need to be careful that your organization is actually able to offer a share offer. I think the business structure is important. I don't think everybody can. I think a community interest company, for example, I believe possibly can't, because you have to be registered with the Financial Conduct Authority. But I think it's possible for organizations to go through Ethex, for example, who are registered with the FCA. So that's a way around it. Is that correct, Josh?
So in terms of offering withdrawable shares, you're absolutely right. It's the organizational structure is the key thing. You've got to be a community benefit society or a cooperative. No other type of organization can offer withdrawable shares. Ordinary equity, ordinary shares, yeah, you have to be a company. You have to be a company limited by shares. So you can have a KIC structure, a CIC structure that issues shares, but it has to be set up in its original, registration as being limited by shares. And then any organisation though can issue debt, for example, bonds. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the key thing. I think the thing you're referring to is around financial promotions. So to bring an offer to a public audience, if you are a KIC or a CBS, you have an exemption from some of the regulations from the FCA around financial promotion sign-off, which is the kind of formal legal sign-off of your offer document that it's fair and transparent and shows all the risks, basically, to protect investors. If you're not a KIC or a CBS, then you do need to get that sign-off done. There is a cost associated with that, but that is something that we can do through the platform at Ethex.
Just whilst I remember something I forgot to mention before, when Josh was talking about the 3 key things to have, you mentioned the importance of the share offer document, which, yeah, I totally agree that I think the share offer document is the key document that really has to have, well, it has all the terms and conditions and things like that in it as well. So all of that legal stuff has to be absolutely watertight. I would highly recommend getting someone from outside your organization to review that, preferably someone with some kind of legal experience or accountancy experience. So maybe that could influence your organization's decisions when recruiting your board members. It can be really useful to have board members with that kind of experience to scrutinize your share offer document. And I can, speaking from experience, I can say that BHESCo share offer documents, I hope, have improved significantly over time. When we look back at our first one from 2015, we're like, what, really? So I would suggest just researching perhaps what other players in the sector, in the area, are doing. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at what others are doing and maybe seeing what doesn't look good and borrowing ideas from what does look good. Because the share offer document really needs to look really professional. It's the thing that I think a lot of investors will potentially judge your organization against. It's what will give them confidence as to whether they're going to give you their money or not.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it doesn't necessarily need to look really professional. I think that helps. I think it needs to tell the story of your organization but also include all of that really important investor information. You know, you need to know about the finances, you need to know about the governance and the people. But at the same time, you also want photographs to bring the story alive. And so, because you've got to engage people too. So it's got to do a lot of things in offer document.
Yeah.
And like Dan says, I'd really recommend taking a look through a couple of other offer documents from other organizations. And also when I speak to people on the, you know, to looking to list on Ethex, I'll always share a couple of offer docs and say, take a look at this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you know, it's not rocket science. I think anyone can do it actually, but to do it right takes a bit of work and a bit of effort.
And just a note that I'd made that with regards to the share offer document, it can be kind of, there's a lot, as you said, there's a lot that goes into it. But I think it's really important to keep your messaging of what your share offer is intended to achieve must permeate that document. So you can get distracted with all the fine details. But I think keeping that front and center and a consistent message throughout your share offer document about what exactly you're raising the money for and all of the good things that will result from that. But I know sometimes, yeah, that can get lost in the complexities and the details. That's probably the most important thing.
So we've already got a few questions in the chat, and I should just say as well, for anyone in the audience that hasn't found the chat, sometimes you have to click on the little icon at the bottom to make the chat appear. So if you'd like to ask any questions, please do in the chat panel. But one of the questions is related to the offer document which you're talking about, which is about, you know, could you potentially use videos within that to kind of illustrate what your organization is about and tell the story of what you're trying to achieve? Is that something that you've done before?
Yes, I mean, I mean, Dan, I don't know if BHESCo's done video, but certainly increasingly we're seeing video being used by organizations to just really tell their story. The key thing with those is keep it 90 seconds, under 2 minutes, you know, keep it brief. That's more than enough. And it's a really nice kind of sort of thing to have alongside the offer document, which might go, as you say, go into the more details, but you know, here's an opportunity to tell the story, to show the project and to show the people involved. And it's really funny dealing with community energy. I see so many photos of solar panels but with no people in them.
Yeah,
put some people in it, because that's what people respond to actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is very true, but speaking from our experience, sometimes it can be hard to get, especially if it's rooftop mounted solar. It can be hard to it's hard to get people to have someone in it and to see the solar panels at the same time. But I totally agree. Yeah, like just pictures of solar panels on roofs, which could be anywhere, is not so great.
Yeah.
People of what people engage with, right?
And the other question is a sort of more technical one, and it's around the pros and cons of the different kinds of investment opportunities that you can provide. So what are the pros and cons of withdrawable shares and bonds? Yeah.
Okay, so there's two sides to this, because there's the business and there's the investor. Okay, and it's, you know, you're constantly having to balance between the two of them. So I think withdrawable shares are really, really good for engaging your local community, because what they do is they give membership of the organization, so that you're enhancing that ownership and that kind of community aspect of it. They also, from the perspective of the business, they are quite a flexible form of finance. So they tend to be long-term. You know, people investing for community shares should be thinking about a 20-year investment period, maybe even. It's at the director's behest as to whether or not they pay the target interest rate or enable withdrawals to take place in any given year. And basically what they've got to do is they've got to look and see if that payment would financially destabilize the organization. And if it does, then they can say, actually, no, we're not going to be able to pay that in this given year. It's quite flexible for the business. Bonds are a more structured type of product. So they have a fixed endpoint when they need to be paid back. They have a fixed amount of interest to be paid each year. Investors tend to like them because they tend to be more appealing to, I suppose, a more returns focused investor. They can also go into an innovative finance ISA, which is something that we can offer on the Ethex platform. So investors can make that investment through the ISA, we call it. And so their interest payments are tax-free up to the limit of a holding of £20,000 a year. So I think probably in terms of an organisation, particular organisation starting out, I'd really recommend withdrawable shares. Maybe as you develop or you want to move on to a really quite a large project that you might need a big finance raise for, there you might look to do a bond raise because you can get out to a broader range of investors actually.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to discuss that further at later date because it's quite an involved conversation, that one.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much. There's a question here about the sorts of questions that you frequently get asked by first-time investors and how you kind of get them over that first kind of step to make that first investment.
So, yeah, Dan, have you had sort of?
I feel like the hurdles or the questions that you might be asked from first-time investors would be the same for not necessarily just to do with community share off. It'd probably be from from people who haven't invested in anything at all. Where typically I think some people don't really realise that their pension is an investment, right? So you actually are engaged in the stock market. Perhaps it's not as proactively as you might, on a kind of daily basis. But I think one way, certainly to engage people who haven't invested before, is to have a launch event for your share offer. We haven't discussed that yet. Obviously, we can't really do that right now, but hopefully in the next 4 or 5 months, when people can actually meet again, having an face-to-face, in-person, live launch event, I think is terrifically valuable. Partly because you can bring to that event the kind of people that Josh was talking about that you might want to have in your promotional video. So the actual stakeholders, the school governors, for example, or a facilities manager, or whoever's going to directly benefit from your project could talk about the great benefits that it's going to bring. And that, of course, that also gives a live opportunity for people to ask those questions. Because obviously some people can be hesitant to ask a question, but maybe somebody in the audience will ask the question that they want to ask. I'll pass over to Josh if you have any input there.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. A lot of the questions that first-time investors might ask is, how safe is my money? Are my returns guaranteed? How much interest will I be getting paid? How do I get my money back? And they're these sorts of questions, and you have to be really straight up with this, because investing directly into a business is not the same as investing, through a pension in some ways, because your risk is concentrated in that one business. So the risk profile is very different, and we always say to people, think of these as a social investment first and a financial investment second. And okay, it's great if you get, you can get a financial return out of that, but really you should be looking at the social impact. And that needs to be your primary motivation for investing. But having said that, we've had, as you say, we've had £100 million raised on our platform, and we've got a very good track record from the businesses there of paying returns. I think there's quite a lot of evidence to suggest that kind of community-based organisations are more resilient than other types of businesses, actually. So I suppose I guess they want to get to know the business as well. I think the people behind it, the project, what's good, what can be delivered.
I think once a business has been going for a few years, and once you have a proven track record of making your interest payments annually to your investors, that should give new investors confidence as well, and hopefully existing investors encouragement to maybe invest some more.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's really true, and I think BHESCo is a brilliant case in point here. So we started off with BHESCo quite a few years ago. I think it's 2015 maybe was the first offer. I can't remember what the raise was. Is it about 300,000, something like that maybe?
Oh, I thought it was sort of 60 to 70. I don't think it was.
Okay, okay, so it might have been quite a bit smaller. But what happened is, over time, is BHESCo has built up that relationship with their investor base. They've paid their returns, they've delivered their projects. And now, so when BHESCo came back last time, they were actually able to over-raise. They raised over £600,000 on their raise. And that's because they've got existing investors who can see the track record and will reinvest or invest more. And also other investors come along and say, okay, look, great, that organisation is doing it. They've walked the walk. So, I'm happy to put my money in. So it's about building that relationship as well. So don't see your community share raise or your investment raise, your first one, as your only one. Think of it as a journey you're going to be going on over time.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a question here about well, it's what's the most common reason for a funding campaign to fail, which is so. But are there any things that have that go wrong, sort of more commonly, that could be avoided?
So I might turn that round and say the biggest predictor of success for a share offer is good engagement with their core community beforehand. Because what will stop an investment in it, or what can cause problems for an investment raise, is if there's no momentum in it. So if it goes live on the platform and it sits there on 0%, because it's normal crowd behavior if something's sitting there on 0, that other people aren't going to come in. If you've energized your base, got them to come and put money in at the start of the offer, then other investors see that and they go, great, that's validation of this offer. Other people have put their money in. I'm going to put my money in. And so I think that's probably the key, definer of success.
Yeah, I totally agree. And sometimes when you see a share offer, such as the low carbon hub one you mentioned earlier, that when it does have really good momentum, you're kind of thinking as a potential investor. I did take part in that offer. You feel like you need to act quickly before the window closes. So this, it's all about momentum, as Josh says.
Yeah. Can you sort of expanding on the kind of engagement side of things? Have you got any sort of examples of really unusual or really kind of effective engagement strategies that sort of took a different way of? I've got a couple of thoughts in my mind about things that people have said to us, but I'm interested to hear anything that you've got about community engagement.
I think Dan mentioned it earlier, get out in front of as wide an audience as possible. Think about, yes, engage with sustainability kind of, stakeholder, people who are involved in sustainability in your area. But think more broadly about that. Think about, going to the Women's Institute and talking to those types of meetings. Really, maybe think outside of your realm, your normal area, but think of all those communities that were going to benefit from this and are sort of involved in it in a way. And so really, think outside that. I would also say, we do quite a lot of work around things like digital media, and that's really good for raising the profile and getting people's attention. But if you can also use sort of traditional methods, like maybe something in the local press or on the local TV, something like that, that really helps an offer as well.
Yeah, I think we really feel that the success or potential failure of a share offer is all about the relationships that you've built over time, which was one of the first things I said. And then really trying to leverage the power of your network to your advantage when the time comes. So, and in the community energy sector, for example, there's regionally we have Community Energy South, which will always promote to their newsletter members a share offer that anyone is running. And of course, Community Energy England nationally they advertise all of they present all of the share offers that are open at any given time on their website. So, and of course, making use of things like LinkedIn and the social media channels, obviously. So I just think, just trying to build those up to the extent that you can, and making connections really pays off when the time comes to pull the trigger, as they say.
I think BHESCo is really good as well. Like, obviously, being from the comms end of things, I get to see all of the things that BHESCo does on social media and in terms of the sort of engagement stuff. And I think it's a lot of telling stories about stuff that isn't necessarily directly asking people to invest in a share offer. It's kind of building that whole picture of what the organization is about and the things that the people who work for BHESCo care about, and what the other stakeholders who are involved care about, so that it sort of feels a little bit less like we just want your money, and a lot more like this is what we are, and this is how we're helping people, and this is what we care about.
That's lovely to hear. And that's because that is the ethos of our organization, was established to tackle climate change. The investment side of it really is just a conduit to achieving those goals.
Similarly for us, we're not for profit. We have three themes, and that is tackling climate change, that is combating inequality, and it's making communities more resilient. And those are our three impact areas. And that's and community energy tends to hit all of those, actually, which is why it's such a sweet spot for our investors.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really running out of time. I would really love to ask a couple more questions. If you guys got a little bit longer, if we want to just ask a couple more.
I do, yes. Yeah.
Okay. I just feel like it's there are so many more that have come through. There's a really interesting question here about whether you have a view on whether current social investment success is linked to ultra low commercial bank interest rates. So basically whether people are looking to invest in these kinds of projects more because they're basically not getting any returns on their money if they just put it in their bank account.
Anecdotally, speaking from my own experience of myself over the last couple of years, yes, because as soon as you realize how paltry your savings account is with your bank, then I was looking around, casting around for a better return, but then also just really, so yes, I think to a short degree, but then once I'd engaged or dipped my toe in the social enterprise, the world of social investing, just that knowledge that your money is out there achieving stuff is far more valuable to me actually than the interest rate you get. Would you agree, Josh?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Yes, I think low interest rates have been helpful in that, but I would always, I'd always hesitate to compare an investment into an individual business with putting your money in a bank. From a risk profile, they're completely different things. But yeah, it's more about the transformational impact that your money can have. And I think you touched on it earlier, Dan, when you said that, well, everyone puts money into their pension pots, everyone's investing, and actually, by people taking control of their investing and using their money in a way which drives positive impact. I mean, we think that's really transformational, and that's why we do what we do. And it's been very interesting over lockdown, actually, to see we're getting real engagement with people on that, and we've seen lots more activity on the platform. And I think part of it is being driven by people wanting something more purposeful from their money.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, one final question, and just because I think it's something that probably quite a lot of people are wondering. So can you run a community share offer, use community share model for non-community energy projects? So for other kinds of projects, we've got a question here saying that this organisation wants to take over a care home that the council has closed and make it into a community hub and sheltered housing. So could they use something like a community share offer to fund that sort of project?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. There was one. There was one recently last year, I think, on the Ethex platform. That was it, THERA. Was that you? Maybe.
Thera, yes. That's a bond for a disability charity. Yeah. I think. Yeah, I mean, the answer to that is absolutely yes. So we work with lots of organisations delivering affordable housing, supported housing as well. We did a raise for an organisation up in Edinburgh doing housing for long-term homeless people. And the answer is yes. The key thing is that you've got a revenue model in there that is sustainable. It's a sustainable business, and you are able to pay a return to investors. Now that return can be quite low, as low as 1%. But there needs to be some sort of quid pro quo from that.
Yeah. Preferably measurable social impact, social environmental impact.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, that's sort of. Yeah, I guess I get used to that with Ethex because that is our USP. There has to be impact. We won't work with projects that don't deliver impact.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very, very much for your time, and thank you for staying for a few minutes longer.
It was brilliant. Thank you.
Really lovely to hear from you both, and thank you to the audience as well for asking so many questions. If you want to catch up on this or watch it again, it will be on our YouTube channel soon, and please go to carboncopy.eco to find out about all the amazing initiatives that are taking place all over the UK to fight the climate crisis, including BHESCo. And thank you very much again to our speakers.
Okay.
Thank you, Izzy, and thank you, audience.
Right.
Thanks, Izzy. Thanks, Carbon Copy, and thanks to everyone who watched. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.